and British imports into France of all kinds could be subjected to more rigorous checks. These are among the measures threatened by the French government if Britain doesn't approve more licences for French boats to fish in UK waters. The prospect of it becoming even more difficult to get British fish to customers in the EU is daunting for exporters.
You know, we could survive without the French market. That's not the issue. The issue is that the French market, France, beg your pardon, is the hub of all the exports, be it going to Italy, Germany, Spain, Belgium, whatever. The fish has to go through the tunnel to go to France. If you say, would it be sustainable to try and sell the product here in the UK, when you're talking about one species, be it a cuttlefish, for example, where there's 50 to 70 tonne landed here this week, 50 to 70,000 kilos, not 1% of that is sold in the UK. We'd have to forget sending fish to Spain. We'd probably have to work on the eastern side of Europe and maybe take a ferry from Harwich into Holland, which would be possible, expensive, but possible, probably a day delay. We're already down to a 3 or 4 day week because of Brexit and the fact that it's not economical to send on a daily basis anymore with the extra cost. So that would probably bring us down to a 2 or 3 day week, but it is feasible. The end result could be that the boats have to tie up. If there's no sails, no way of getting the fish across, then there's no point in catching it.
Meanwhile, comments made by the Prime Minister about standard fishing practices here at home have provoked a furious reaction from industry figures. The PM was answering questions from children ahead of the COP26 climate change conference, which kicks off in Glasgow this weekend.
Hi Boris. As ocean defenders, we are aware of the importance that the ocean and blue carbon will play in slowing climate change. But when we are reading that seabed dredging can produce as much carbon as the aviation industry, how will you tackle this but support the fishing communities too?
Thank you very much, Aaron and Amber. Look, that is a very, very good question. And I'm against seabed dredging for lots of reasons. First of all, because I think it's against the interests of sustainable fisheries. You dredge up far too much. It's indiscriminate harvesting of everything that's on the seabed, and it does huge damage to the marine environment. So it's disastrous from that point of view. But then I'm against it also from the point of view of climate change.
Inaccurate and sensational. Be interested to know when the PM will ban farmers from ploughing fields or using combine harvesters, tweeted Professor Michael Kaiser, Professor of Fisheries Conservation at Heriot-Watt University. I could not believe what I was hearing, said veteran South West fishing leader Jim Portis. And here's the Shadow Environment Secretary Luke Pollard.
Well, I don't think the Prime Minister either understands fishing, cares about the impacts of his words, or has a clear plan here. If he's going to ban dredging, that means he's basically taken out the entire scalloping industry from UK fisheries. But if he's also banning dredging, he's also attacking bottom trawling, which attacks another huge part of our industry. We've got a real problem here because we've got a Prime Minister that seems to be making policy up for the fishing industry on the hoof.
Neil, it was quite an extraordinary thing to say, wasn't it?
Well, it's a very sort of Boris Prime Minister-like statement. He's asked a direct
question. He's in charge of the country.
And he makes a direct answer. Now, I've got faith in George Eustace and the department to make sure that fishing...
so nothing like that happens?
Will continue.
Completely wrong?
Not necessarily completely wrong, because general dredging is we don't want, do we? But I think that the fishing practices we do, and where we can tighten up on some of those fishing practices, we will do. So, but I mean, I'm much more interested in where the French are and where they are about to try and internationally stop trade. This is against international trade rules. I mean, and this is a storm in a French teacup if they drank tea, the French.
Okay, well, picking up on unless you want to talk about dredging particularly, Anne, I think that's probably cleared up. But in terms of the broader picture...
Could I say just one thing, which is that Boris' reason he didn't give was that his wife, until very recently, and probably still, was involved with an outfit called Oceana. One of their main campaigns is anti-dredging. He didn't seem to think that was relevant in his list of questions or reasons.
I see. Now, moving on to the broader issue, the fish merchant we have from there, Ian Perks, has made the point powerfully several times that, of course, access to the EU market through Boulogne particularly is pretty much essential to the British industry. How do we deal with this problem? Because the French have made it clear this is probably the first stage. We could then see them moving to a blockade of the ports.
Well, I don't believe this will happen because it's such total nonsense. The French want their coquilles Saint-Jacques. We can't eat them all. What has got to happen is an outbreak of common sense. I can see why the French have behaved as they have. We can all see it. George Eustace saw it. There's an election coming up and they want to be seen to be rattling sabres. But surely by Tuesday people can sit down. We've got to sort out all the glitches which are occurring at the moment, which were inevitable given the big change that's happened with Brexit. But it's of no benefit to either side.
People like Ian Perks suggest there are rather more than glitches.
Well, I think there shouldn't be more than glitches, and I think that if people were sensible and sat down together and talked about it, they needn't.
But that is, as they say, his lived experience, isn't it? What he was saying there. His working days are reduced, the number of consignments he can send to reduce, and that's before we get additional problems.
Yeah, well, it's got to be sorted out. It's not in the French interest, it's not in our interest. We can respond by being equally bellicose, but I would have thought the right approach is the sort of Obama approach. If they go low, we go high. And we sit down and we talk. And we talk about the way in which both our exports and their imports can be dealt with in a way that don't cause this sort of problem for the industries in both countries. If that doesn't happen, then it will be very bad news for both sides.
Now, Neil, so that's Anne's recommendation. The government, of course, Lord Frost and George Eustace have suggested there could be retaliation. George Eustace said that 2 people could play at this game. Of course, we can't retaliate in a like-for-like way in terms of customs checks, because as you've complained many, many times, we've continually postponed imposing any of these checks on this side of the border, and we haven't got the capacity to just suddenly do that from next week or next month or possibly until next year.
That's right. I mean, I think it's probably going to be January now next year before
That's legal checks. The physical checks not until July.
I know, and this is where we are missing a trick, if you like, or missing a negotiation position, because it's you see, the French know that fresh fish, the value of fish is it being fresh, and so if you can't get it through a French port, you will reduce its value. They are breaking international law, same when they threatened to sort of stop electricity going into Jersey. It's all against international law. As Anne has said, it's all about a presidential election that's about to take place in April. Now, we've got to try and actually sort of raise ourselves above that, but I think we have got to be quite firm with the French, because we are licensing the boats, the French boats that can prove they had fishing rights in our waters. They've got to prove those. If they prove them, they will get licensed. In the meantime, if they didn't, they can't prove it, they won't. And I think, I mean, this is again, if anything Brexit was about, it was actually to try and control our waters. So therefore, this is always going to be one of those issues where there's going to be a battle on both sides. Macron wants to make sure that he's standing up for his French fishermen. Boris wants to make sure he's standing up for British fishermen. But what we've got to be careful of is that we don't sacrifice the fishing industry, because we politicians, we will enjoy it. I mean, let's face it, we've always enjoyed a spat with the French for one reason or another, and so therefore we've got to be careful we don't enjoy this too much and don't actually settle the situation so that we can get our fish back into France.
Okay, we're out of time. Thank you to Anne up on Export and Neil here in the studio. We'll see you at the same time next week. Goodbye.